We've been building these agents for a couple of years now, and I'll give you maybe two or three different examples to get you sort of concrete on what we're doing. Let's take one example. Maybe you're a software company and, talk about buzzwords. The concept of an AI agent has become sort of common parlance in the past year, but you'd never heard of it the year before.
Hello, welcome back to the Clicks to Customers podcast. This is John Horn, your host and CEO of Stub Group. We're a digital advertising agency and premier Google partner, helping people dominate Google Ads and make money online. And today I'm joined by a special guest. Shanif Dhanani is the founder of Locusive. And we're going to be talking SaaS today and generative AI, and specifically how SaaS providers can use generative AI to improve customer experiences and boost conversions. So Shanif, thank you so much for joining today.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation up ahead.
Same here. So let's dig in. Lots of buzzwords there, especially on the AI side of things, and lots of constantly changing things. Every day feels like a new day in the AI world. So let's just start from the top. Could you kind of give some background on yourself and your company and kind of what problems you're looking to solve right now?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity. So my background, I'm mostly a techie and a software guy. I've been building software for about 20, 25 years. And about 15 years ago, I got heavy into the world of machine learning and AI. And so most of the software that I built is around AI systems. A lot of that, you can think about it as things like predicting who's going to click on an ad, which is what I did for a while. That was my first company, built an ad tech platform, sold that to Twitter, continued working on their ads team. Then I started another company where we were predicting what customers were going to buy from e-commerce stores using AI. And today we're building, it's a new company, and what we're doing is we're creating what we call AI agents that essentially help customers of software or even users of an e-commerce store essentially find what they're looking for and get essentially what they need within that software very quickly. And again, using AI. So I'm a techie at heart.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you lots of dumb questions, so bear with me as we go, but hopefully, I know they'll be helpful to me and hopefully to some who are listening. So let's do some definitions. AI agent, what does that mean? What specifically is an AI agent, and how does that maybe differ from what a lot of people think about these days when they hear AI, which is, ChatGPT, stuff like that?
Yeah, talk about buzzwords. The concept of an AI agent has become sort of common parlance in the past year, but you'd never heard of it the year before. I like to think of it as software systems that can automatically take actions to essentially handle a user's request. A lot of this could be very similar to what you see with ChatGPT. You're asking a system to do something, and let's say ChatGPT now can search the web. Well, ChatGPT is an agent because it can now handle a request from you to, let's say, look up the weather and then tell you what the weather is tomorrow. That's a really simple agent, but you can have really complicated agents that maybe are taking 7, 10, 20 different steps along the process of helping your users or helping you accomplish some task. So if I had to really sum it up, it's basically software that can think and reason on its own and take actions using tools.
Awesome. So almost an assistant going out and doing things for you, where you'd say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z done. And it just goes off and does it and reports back once it gets to the end of that process, and then kind of goes from there. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to sum it up.
Awesome. So when it comes to the problems that you are solving, and the ways that you're helping people with these AI agents and the infrastructure you're building out, can you give maybe some examples? Could be use cases for yourself or from existing customers, or something that would just kind of help us visualize how can we use what you're doing to improve our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been building these agents for a couple of years now, and I'll give you maybe two or three different examples to get you sort of concrete on what we're doing. Let's take one example. Maybe you're a software company and you've got lots of people using your product, but maybe you don't have a big data team and you are trying to figure out, hey, look, like which of our customers are using this feature, or how many people are we logging into or are logging in every day? Well, you could use our agent to essentially connect into your database and then ask it a question, something like, hey, how many people are using X feature? And our agent will then go and pull the data from your database and then give you an answer. Hey, 20 people logged in yesterday, 10 people today. Really simple example. So that's one area where you can use agents to analyze data for you, and you don't need to know a lot of code. Another example, totally on the flip side, maybe you're actually browsing an e-commerce store and you're looking for sweaters or shoes. You can ask our agent, that might be sitting on that store. Instead of searching like you normally would with keywords, you can talk to an agent and say, hey, can you go find me shoes or sweaters that are brown and less than $100? And that agent will go and search the products that store makes available. It'll filter it down and it'll give you a final list. And so I know those are two totally opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what agents can do. I think the similarity here is, you're telling a system, hey, I want this, and then you let the system go and figure out how to do it and then get you the results.
Awesome. Let me ask you, so a little while ago I was playing around with Pinterest with my wife actually, and they had an AI tool on there, and basically it was giving prompts of assemble, give us a fictional character and we'll assemble you a fit basically of what that that person might wear that you can then buy through the platform. Actually, it wasn't Pinterest. It was, I forget what website it was actually right now. Is that an example of AI agents in action where they are going and kind of saying, okay, I want to replicate this look and then go search through our database and see what products we have that matches that? Or would that be something that's different?
I think it probably fits the bill, without knowing exactly how they're doing it. My suspicion is they're taking some AI tool, maybe like ChatGPT, and they're coming up with the types of clothing, for example, that might fit this character. And then they're using some sort of search feature to go and find the most relevant pieces of clothing, and then they're presenting it to you. So without knowing more, it does sound like it could be, a quintessential agent that is doing something for the user in a more sophisticated way.
That makes sense. Thanks for bearing with me as I wrap my head around these concepts.
My pleasure.
So in terms of actually accessing the agent and giving it instructions, if I want you to do X, Y, and Z, tangibly, like where do I go to submit those instructions and to set things up? Where the agents live?
Yeah, so if you are a SaaS provider or a retailer or someone who's got a website, you could build something like this yourself. Like, let's talk quickly about that. If you're building something like this yourself, you've got a team of engineers who are creating usually some sort of interface that your users can talk to. Normally it's a chatbot, but today we are also seeing things like voice notes or videos. But let's just go with chats. Your engineering team is building a chatbot that gives your agent some instructions. And then you are responsible for making sure that agent does what it has to do, and there's a lot of code involved. But if you're using something like Locusive, what you could do is go to our website and then just click a couple of buttons. The buttons will then help you, for example, connect your help docs, or they'll help you train the system on what sort of data is in your database. And then you copy a little piece of code, put it onto your website, and that puts a chatbot onto your website for you. So if you're the SaaS creator, you basically use something like a nice tool or front end that folks like ourselves have built to set it up, and then your users can start chatting with it right away. We generally find that's faster and cheaper than building it yourself.
That makes sense. Awesome. And I think I saw on your website that you work with Slack as well, right? As an entry point, at least for some company use cases. How does that process kind of work?
Yeah, so our Locusive product sort of has two components to it. The first one is where you put the agent on your website, but the second is maybe your team wants to be able to find data or analyze data themselves internally. And so for that internal use case, we've essentially built this Slack assistant, and you can talk to it just like you would with an external agent. You message it, and just like our other agents, it can be connected to your data sources. Maybe it's connected to your Google Docs or your internal Salesforce instance or, whatever it is, your database. When you send a message on Slack, that message will then be handled by the agent who, goes off, runs off in the background, finds the data, analyzes it, crunches the numbers, and then comes back to you with the results. And so what's cool about Slack is because it's mostly your team using it, you can give it access to maybe more sensitive data or data that you wouldn't necessarily want your website visitors to handle. And it's a way for your team to try to be a little bit more productive and hopefully offload a lot of the data processing tasks that they don't like to do otherwise.
That makes sense. I can definitely relate, here at Stub Group, thinking through some of the different, many different tools that we use. We've got HubSpot for a CRM, we've got Notion where we have information, we've got, Slack where we're communicating, we've got email and databases and other things going on. And so really it sounds like, Locusive and the agency you guys create would be a way for us to network those things together and to be able to have one entry point and say, okay, find me this piece of information, go and do this, and then it can kind of ping out and go to the different places it needs to, collate information, and then come back and give an answer or give analysis, which is really fabulous because we spend a lot of time going through different programs and platforms, which I'm sure is part of why you built this. Yeah. I'm curious logistically, how do the agents actually get access to something like a HubSpot CRM or a Notion database? How does it get into there? Is it a user? Is there a login? Is it through API? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. So just like when you might sign up with some sort of service, you've got that button. Maybe it's like, hey, sign in with Google. It's a very similar process with us. So once you've got an account on our system, you can go to our integrations page and then sign in with Google essentially to any of those integrations, or sign in with Salesforce, or sign in with Notion, whatever the integration is. So you click a button and then you basically give our application access to read your data. And so what happens at that point is we do use their API along with your user's credentials to access your data. And we might do something, we might store that data in our own database and index it in a way that it's searchable easily. Or we might just say, hey, look, we don't need to do anything now, but when you ask a question, we'll go and connect to the system and then we'll pull the data at that point. But ultimately it is done with the user's account who's connecting, which is kind of cool because then you can use their permissions to ensure data security and privacy and all that good stuff as well.
That makes sense. Awesome. So on the customer side of things, are you noticing any patterns in the types of customers that are coming to you and are most interested in finding the most value from your tools?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different types of customers that we've worked with. Type 1 would be folks who've got a lot of data in a database and maybe not a lot of data scientists. And what they're looking to do is basically give their non-technical team a way to look up information. So this would be that internal use case that we talked about earlier where maybe they're using Slack. And that's interesting because these folks are now able to ask a lot of questions and get an answer back, and also not only the answer, but see the actual raw data that our agents use to come up with the answer so that they can double check it if they want. So that's type 1. Type 2 would be folks who are maybe smaller startups and they want to be able to create an agent on their web application or their SaaS application so that the agent can do a lot of the onboarding. Maybe the agent is designed to collect information from the users and then use that information to set up their profile or do some onboarding. And then third, what we're starting to see more and more today are, as I mentioned a couple of times, e-commerce stores and retailers who are using our agents to do things like have better search results when somebody searches for something or answer questions about a product. So it comes down to folks who do have data. I mean, that's sort of the agents that we build all rely on you having some task or some data that you want to accomplish. But we've started to specialize in those couple of areas.
Fantastic. And it's very obvious to see the potential for savings in terms of, manpower, the potential for just improving customer experience, getting people onboarded faster. Like you said, the search results, being more helpful, coming through more quickly. So lots of opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, as you look at where AI is right now, where agents are, and kind of what's coming down the pipeline, Are there any things you're particularly excited about, or maybe conversely, particularly concerned about in terms of where things are going with AI?
That's such a good question. Because I've been working in AI for so long, I tend to be more on the optimistic side. And maybe, I'm not someone who thinks, oh, AI is going to take over the world. And gosh, I hope I'm not wrong here. So I see a lot of opportunities because of that bias, that optimistic bias. One thing I'm interested in, you all might have seen it recently, computer use, where you have something like ChatGPT or Claude you can say something like, hey, go order me a Domino's pizza, and it'll take your computer, it'll browse to the website, order you a pizza, and do everything automatically. So that's the concept of an agent, but that's sort of a more advanced agent. Really excited about that. I'm also excited about the ability to use voice a little bit more intelligently. We've had Alexa for a while, but it kind of feels like it's stagnated. And now with ChatGPT and other tools that let you process voice, you're able to build agents that can respond to a user's voice or commands, which is really interesting because humans, we're not really created to type all day. We're sort of created to talk and chat. And I think that's a really big opportunity for us. Where we're focused now, we've sort of had a lot of success recently with, shopping, online shopping. That was actually my last background, as I mentioned. And so we are doing a lot in the world of retail and e-commerce, helping users use AI to find what they want and even find what they maybe didn't know that they wanted, that the AI finds for them. But I love this concept of agents. I think that I've been a software guy for a while. We've never had a world where computers can essentially think for themselves and take actions for themselves. And so the general concept of agents is super exciting for me, and I'm really excited to see where they go.
I'm curious, in the e-commerce world, like you gave as an example there, how much, so let's say I'm a retailer, I'm selling kids' toys online. And I want to, work with you, leverage your agents to improve the search functionality, the discovery functionality of my website. How much do I have to kind of program into the agent to say things like, well, don't feature products that are out of stock, or, emphasize these types of products or whatever? And how much of that is just intuitively kind of identified over time by the agent?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So I like to think of these agents as like college level graduates who maybe have basic common sense, but maybe they don't know a ton about how you like to run your business. And so what we do is we give you the ability to tell the agents general things that they should know when they are responding to a user's request. Maybe you maintain inventory in your system and the agent can read that inventory. Well, in that case, you can tell it, hey, look at the inventory before you come up with a search result. Some of our other people are, print on demand, and so they don't maintain inventory. And so for them, you can say, don't even look at inventory. So in general, what we like to say is pretend you just hired somebody smart from like a college school or Ivy grad, and train the agent the same way you would train them. And that should be the majority of what you need to do. From there, the agent can handle your user's requests, handle your requests, and follow your instructions so that it will essentially provide the output that either you or your team or your users or customers are looking for.
What I like about hiring that smart college grad is you're not paying them a smart college grad salary. That's part of that. So segueing to the pricing side of things, how do you think through pricing and structure that for your customers?
Thus far, we have been primarily pay-per-use. And so what that means is we charge based on the number of requests that your team sends to our agents, but we do have a minimum. And so the concept is we want to make sure you're using these things actively. And sometimes if you don't have a minimum, people might be hesitant. It's not that much. Maybe at the lowest end, we charge $100 a month for 1,000 requests, depending on the functionality that you want. Some agents are smarter in that they can look at your database, they can look at other things. Some are dumber, and all they do is search. So it kind of just depends on what you're looking for. As we now really get into the world of e-commerce, we are thinking of maybe taking a percentage of the sales that our agents generate. Mm-hmm. And so this is something we're experimenting with, where if an agent recommends you a particular product or finds you a search item that you hadn't thought about, then it could make sense for us to say, hey, our agents drove this business, so you might be paying a commission. Experimenting with that now, but thus far it's been pay-per-use.
That makes sense. Yeah, that pay-per kind of revenue share, that's an interesting model. given that you're driving, hopefully incrementality in sales and helping generate sales that wouldn't have otherwise existed. That's very interesting. Cool, awesome. Well, in terms of onboarding, if someone's listening to this conversation, watching this conversation, says, "Hey, I've got an e-commerce store as an example, and I wanna check this out." What would their next step be, and what would kind of the rough timeline look like for how long it might take to go from day one with you to getting to where they want to be with these agents set up and firing properly?
It's pretty, what we're trying to do is make it as straightforward as possible. So we actually do have agents that are specialized for e-com. And so if you reached out to us today, basically the way it would look is we would get access to your product catalog. If you're on Shopify, that's actually really easy. You just give us your store and we can read it in within an hour. If you're larger or you're not on Shopify, what we would have to do is get a file, read it in, and then once it's read in, you would install a little piece of code on your website where when somebody clicks that search icon or the search button on your site, it actually brings up our search agent instead of your standard search. So in the best case scenario, it's a few hours, maybe a couple of days to get everything set up. Could take a little bit longer depending on your setup, but as we build the product that we're building and we refine it and improve it, our hope is it can be very quick and self-service. Still early days, agents haven't been around for that long, and it's even early for us, but as we build, we're hoping to make it a lot easier and a lot quicker for you.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Shanif, as we wrap up here, I think maybe the last question I'll ask you is, are there any questions that people should be asking about AI agents, maybe specifically about Locusive, that they're not asking and that you think they should be? And be like, okay, people really should care about this, or they should be thinking about this?
Yeah, I think if I were to sort of recommend something, I would go back to something you asked earlier, which is, what's the setup that, you have to give these things? A lot of people today think that AI knows everything about anything and it can control every single system on the internet and it knows, it knows the whole world. And in reality, what happens is they're surprised when I say, well, it's not going to be able to do this because of X, Y, and Z reason, or maybe it's not going to be able to read your product catalog because, hey, it's private and it doesn't have access to it. And so I think the things people should be asking about are exactly what you asked, which is, what do I need to do to get these set up and why? I think that why is important because there's a lot of lack of education out there about how these things work and what they need. And that's why I always say it's like a college grad that knows nothing about your business. And so that's the first thing I'd be asking. And then I would say, what's changed since last week? Because things are moving so quickly and everything is moving really fast. Just staying in the loop about what these things are capable of doing is not always easy. I do get a ton of questions, and so I could probably go on and on, but I would say those are probably a good two to answer the question you just gave me.
That's awesome. I think the second answer, or kind of question answer you gave there, is also very important because things are changing so frequently. I'm running a business. I don't have time myself to be on top of the latest and greatest in AI agents and what's going on. That's why we need experts like you who live and breathe it and spend your time building out, and then we get to come alongside and pay you a little bit of money and take advantage of all of that experience and time that you put into things. So Shanif, thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot, really appreciate it. To those watching, listening, if this sounds intriguing to you, if it sounds like some of those use cases that were mentioned might be a good fit for your business or your life, I recommend check out Shanif's company. Shanif, where's the best place for people to find you online?
Well, John, thank you so much again for having me. I could talk your ear off about this because I do love this stuff. But if you want to talk more, feel free to reach out on locusive.com, LOCUSIVE.com. And if you're a retailer or e-commerce store, we actually just launched a new website called Nobi, Nobi.ai. And I'm just Shanif at Locusive or Shanif at Nobi.ai. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And we'll get those links and handles in the show notes / description, depending on what platform you watch this on. And Shanif, thanks so much. It was great getting to spend some time with you. And to those watching, listening, thank you for your time. See you on the next episode of the Clicks to Customers podcast.